Now, so what we have today, incredible guest, another Englishman and another brother of colour.
Proud Englishman.
A proud Englishman.
And also a proud brother of colour.
I know. A brother of colour, right? So now, Kieren-Paul Brown is a men's empowerment coach and a ferocious writer. This man and the written word were like born together, like inseparable twins, right? They were born together. And so I'm really looking forward. So tonight, if you're perhaps a man and, maybe it's about, how to gain more confidence with yourself, more confidence speaking to girls, more confidence, just holding conversations, because life is a confidence game, right?
Oh, Robert, what can I say?
Of course you can, brother.
Yeah, so today, the main focus I wanted to speak about was, say, my book, Preeta's Web of Chaos.
We will get to that, brother.
How that relates to women and ethnic minorities.
We'll get to that as well.
Okay, sweet.
We're going to do all of it.
Sweet.
We're going to do all of it.
Okay, well, you know what? Excuse me. I will fall back. I will defer. I will defer to your wisdom. And there you go. Learn from the master.
Oh, it's all good. So then today's going to be a very interesting episode because we are going to do both. So we're going to take it from a man's perspective, which we're going to have to touch on anyway because you are a beautiful man, and we're going to go the other perspective as well and come back to Preeta, which is an incredible, I call it a movement or an initiative that you've started, and it's a really powerful initiative, and we're going to get into the bones of what that looks like and what that is. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, as you know, or those who don't, my name's Robert Ian Bonnick. I'm your host, and I'm a speaker, an author, and an advisor. So I help coaches, entrepreneurs, leaders turn their story into impact and income. So turn a story from impact into income. So look, let's get started. So we're here at Tropical Nomad once again. It feels like I've been here for like 3 solid days. And we had the SpeakuP Monday last night, which is about finding meaning in your life. As this one is as well. It's about the finding of the meaning in your life, what your life stands for in a way, or what it stands for right now. So, brother, going back, and I'd love to start on that story that we just discussed briefly, a brief time ago. So, your journey into empowerment started off, confidence started off with yourself, and the fact that you were saying that you didn't really fit in, or you felt like an outcast, or you felt like you wasn't like everybody else. Could you take us on that journey, and then we'll spray out to the other places where you want to go as well?
Okay. So my journey, essentially, it's weird because it's like you called me like a really handsome and attractive man. And you say that, and it might sound arrogant for me to say this, but you're right. But the thing is that growing up, for the longest time, I didn't see it at all. Yeah. Like I didn't. Yeah. So when it's really interesting for like you to say something like that about me, and I'm like, yeah, I am handsome, but it's like I was actually handsome my whole life, but I had no freaking idea. I felt like a troll. There's that Radiohead song called Creep. Yeah. That song pretty much encapsulates the way I felt about myself. Now, I grew up in Birmingham, Birmingham in England. And when I was growing up, Brum was a very racist place. Yeah. Very. Now, I lived in an area called Sutton Coldfield, which is basically a white area. Everyone there was white, so I was always the only white person, the only black person in my class. And it was like, you're different, you're black, you're different. It's like, okay, that was hard to deal with. Then on the weekends, I'd be with black people. And they'd be like, you sound like a white person. You're different. Because I spent so much time with the white people midweek that I sounded like them. So now black people are like, yo, you're not one of us either. So, oh, my God. So then I was always in trouble as well. Not like I had energy. I was like breaking stuff and stuff. I was always in some situation where there was a teacher that was disappointed or some authority figure was disappointed. And I felt like I did not belong at all. I really did. I felt like the entire world was in on a joke that I didn't get. That's the way I felt, and it grew and grew and grew. If we're going to be honest, right? If you look here, you see this scar. Yeah. There's a good scar here, guys. Yeah. Around the wrist area. I was trying to tilt it to the camera. So what happened was, I'm 19 and I'm at university. Yeah, I'm 19 and I'm at university, and I wanted to be cool, like, because I've gone away and I've gone to university, and this is my chance, right? This is my chance to be somebody. This is my chance. So I tried really hard. I tried really hard, and it didn't really work because I came on too strong. I think like I was nervous, I was insecure, I was in my own head, and these people thought I was a bit silly and stupid. And that made me feel really isolated and alone. And isolated, alone, I didn't know what to do. I was miserable. I started to have like pain in my heart, which I would try and ignore by playing video games all day to try and get away from this pain in my heart, but it wouldn't go away. Anyway, one day, me and the people I lived with, we were going to go drinking, and we were going to go to the club, but beforehand we were drinking in the kitchen. The long and short of it is that we had a conversation, and conversation moves on to the topic of weight, like how heavy things are. And I said to a girl that I thought she looked like she weighed about, was it 10 or 10.5 stone, or 9 or 9.5 stone, I forget which one. I didn't think that was a lot at all, but she did, and she starts crying. Everybody then is upset at me, and this one girl threatened to have me killed for saying that. She goes, "Kieren, you're an arsehole and I could have you killed." And it basically led to me having this accident here where I ripped all the nerves and tendons in my hand and literally couldn't move my hand for like 2 months or so, and just had to walk around with a cast. And the doctor said, if you even try to move your fingers, you'll pop the stitches, so do not even try to move your fingers. So for like 2 months I resisted the urge to even move my fingers for 2 months, which I don't know how the heck I did, but I did. But in that period, when looking back, I was so terrified because I couldn't move my hand at all. And I remember like the blood came out like a hose, and I can't move my hand, and it's like I couldn't, so many things like doing buttons up and whatnot, I actually couldn't do. I ended up reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. You know, they say like when big moments in your life happen, you don't actually realize it's a big moment at the time. It's just something. But looking back, it's like, yeah, this is actually a huge moment. Well, yeah, that was a huge moment for me. And on some level, I was like, I have to figure this stuff out, you know, because I guess on a level, I realized that my inability to connect with people was largely responsible for me having this accident. So anyway, that then got me on this wild personal development journey, where I tried so many different stuff. Paul McKenna had a neuro-linguistic program, album or something. I bought that. I tried meditation. I was reading all manner of different books and whatnot, learning how to like meet women. That was like a big one actually, wanting to know how to meet women and what lines do you say. And to kind of like bring it round, it's like, oh, so much time spent and like trying so many different things and failing in so many different ways. You know, when you're obsessed with something, you eventually get to where you want to be. And then that then led into me like inspiring guys to learn to become confident. There was a period when people kept saying it to me. They kept saying, "Kieren, you should coach guys. You should." I'm like, me? What, me? Me? Little old me. You know, total imposter syndrome. But I dove in and I did it anyway. And for the past few years, that's actually what I've been doing. Although, here's the interesting thing. Supposedly, I'm a dating coach. Supposedly. And I am, but here's the thing. As I said to you before we start recording, in the world of dating coaches, there's effectively two types. There's a type who's going to say, in this situation, do that, and in that situation, do that. And the reason, well, they're telling you what to do and say in certain situations, and that stuff is true. It is actually true. But there's a deeper level underneath it, which these guys don't actually go to. And the deeper level underneath, let me just, this closer. The deeper level is that if I was to give you the most amazing line and you use that amazing line, in the mind of the person you're speaking to, it's what a cool, confident, amazing person I've just met. They're not aware that you've used a line. So there's a deeper level underneath like the using of lines, which is what kind of person actually just naturally exudes this kind of energy. Anyway, So then I'm actually helping guys to do that. I'm not helping them to come up with cheesy lines. I'm helping them to learn to love themselves more, because at the core, that is the thing that prevented them from meeting women anyway. They didn't realize it, but that's actually what it was. It's the fact that when they see that woman, they inherently feel like she's on this higher, tier of life. She's like a Champions League level human being, and I'm like the Vauxhall Conference or something cool. You know what I mean? So it's that. But then, do you want me to speak more about that?
Well, what actually comes up right now, remember your phone is here, brother, so you need to rock forward a little bit. There you go. One thing that comes up is that, so how do guys do it? So if you're a guy watching this now and you want to have more confidence, right, is there like a formula that you use to guide men through becoming more confident?
A formula?
Yeah. Is there? Question.
I mean, okay, there's no set thing, but there's a number of things that they can do. So one thing that I tell everybody to do is to sit alone with their pain. So, for instance, the world is set up for us to distract ourselves pretty much all day. So if there's some woman who lives in Shoreditch in London and she's working at an ad agency, she'll wake up, she'll immediately check her social media, she checks her emails, then she has a shower, maybe she's listening to music in the shower, then when she comes out the shower she's eating food and she's probably listening to a podcast, then she gets dressed and she's on her way to work and she's commuting. She's listening to that podcast the whole time, maybe it's Radiolab or God knows what. Then she's at work. If her work is monotonous enough, she's listening to something while she's working. If not, then she has to focus on the work. Then she has a lunch break. She goes to the gym in the lunch break and listens to music. Then she comes home from work. On the commute back, she's listening to stuff. Then she either goes and hangs out with friends or she sits at home and watches Netflix. But we spend very little time alone with ourselves. And the reason is because when you do that, you start to things about yourself that you don't like or that you're insecure about or whatever, they start to bubble up into your brain. They do. Like a great example for me being, I always give this example to people, but it's a perfect example of what I mean. Years ago, I was in my parents' house and I felt terrible about myself and I didn't know why. I felt terrible. And I did the thing that I always do, which is, all right, Netflix, all right, I'm watching Netflix. And then I was like, nah, YouTube, all right, let's watch YouTube. And then at some point I was like, nah, you know what, I'm not doing this, right? I'm just going to, what is going on? No Netflix, no YouTube. I'm going to sit here and see what the heck is actually going on. So then I did, and I just sat down with that horrible feeling, and then it hit me. I was like, oh, I feel terrible because I'm really bad with money. That's it. I'm ashamed of myself because I'm bad with money. That's actually what's going on. So then it was like, oh, all right. I found myself downloading financial management apps. It's like, nah, this actually needs to change. Because underneath, I'd always felt crappy for the fact that my financial situation was terrible. But I ran away from it. But that's what was going on there. But I was, watching YouTube. And a huge thing. So it's like, as a guy, when you walk up to some woman and you feel insecure, you're insecure because of stuff like that. So if I was to have approached some woman at that period, my poor financial situation would have been part of the reason why in that moment I felt like I wasn't good enough for her. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I believe everybody should do.
What you're saying makes perfect sense. And by the way, our background is very intertwined. Oh. So as a kid growing up, I sounded like my whole belief system growing up in the children's home, even though the children's home was pejoratively black, I was the only black kid at school for the first 13, 14 years, right? So all of my friends were Caucasian. And so basically people would hear me on the phone. And then when I would rock up at their house and be like, oh, I didn't know you were black, right? And then vice versa as well. And it's only when I had to retake some A-levels, which is like 16, 17 for those of you who are watching. Only then was I going to a college that was 90% black. So it was like this reverse, it's like a reverse culture shock that happened to me. But the interesting part is that gifted me on the path of being a bridge between the two.
Yep.
Right? And I'm getting the same vibe from you, brother.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very interesting. Because there are things now that I guess me and you are comfortable doing that people who grew up in either of the worlds that we used to bounce back and forth in growing up wouldn't do. For instance, most people who, pretty much everybody I grew up with in Birmingham still lives in Birmingham.
Yeah.
They still live there. And a lot of them still live within like 4 or 5 miles of where we went to school. But the fact that I was constantly in, I was like, okay, I'm in the black world and I'm in the white world. And there was a benefit to not really feeling like I belonged in either. Yeah. Because I didn't really feel like I belonged in either, that made me feel comfortable with being in places where I didn't quote unquote belong. Yeah. Because I'd kind of been used to not belonging. So then when someone goes, hey, why don't you move to Bali? I was like, yeah, fuck it. Yeah, like, why not? Like, you know what I mean? So there are actually benefits to that.
Yeah, you know, and like it's interesting because again, as you mentioned before, like writing, right? So writing for you was always a really powerful release, right? Or a powerful way for you to express yourself. And maybe this was during that time, I think you said, where you wasn't really feeling great about yourself. You wasn't feeling great about how you looked, your weight, and all the rest of that. And writing, in a way, was a release for you, right? So maybe if you can take us on that journey a little bit so the people who are watching here can kind of follow that part through of your story. Yeah.
All right. So my mum taught me to read well before I went to school. Well before. In fact, I think, looking back, I've been thinking this in the past couple of months. I was reading properly when I started school at an age when I think they were teaching other people to read. Yeah. And I hated school, and that's probably part of it because I was bored as all hell. But the point is this. She taught me to read really early. And I spoke to her about this like 2 weeks ago. She said that she very deliberately programmed me to love reading. It was very, very. She didn't just like teach me to read. She was like, I want him to love reading, so I'm going to manipulate him into loving reading. Like, and it worked. Right? Obviously, it worked.
If you're watching now, our kids, Marina, if you're watching this, we need to manipulate our kids, right? Yeah. Manipulate our kids into reading and writing.
That's totally what you need to do. And so every week every day I would beg her to buy me new books. And she'd have a new book maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, I'm not sure. But it was frequent. And when I'd get those books, I would devour the hell out of them. I'd be reading them up and down in bed, reading the books, fall asleep on top of the book, and you wake up and pages are ripped off and that sort of stuff. And so there's a couple of things where, say, reading is concerned. Number one, like stories. So I love the fact that a great story can take you into another world. I really love that. Like, one of my best story experiences is seeing Blood Diamond at the cinema. Whenever that film came out, I saw it at the cinema. And it was a packed cinema as well, which I really like because it's like all of us were all sharing in this experience. We're all sharing in it together. That film was powerful as all hell. Yeah. At the end of the movie, like, get up and everyone's kind of stunned. And I remember I made eye contact with this guy. I don't know how old he was, like 25 or 30 or something. And he looked back at me. And we didn't need to say anything, but it was like, what the heck did we just watch? I never saw him again. But I really, we were like, oh my gosh, what the heck was that? And as I said to you before we started recording, it's a fantastic story. It makes you forget that the world exists. So when I was watching Blood Diamond, I was traveling from the US to, I think they're in London at some point, then to Sierra Leone. I was there. Yeah. I was in Sierra Leone. And even though the film was 2 hours long, I spent like 2 years of my life or something. I actually lived for 2 years in that period of time. And that's what I love about stories. You can create a world that doesn't exist, and then you can take people to that world. So in the years when I didn't have, many friends and whatnot, I was reading a lot. That and playing video games. But yeah. So looking back, it was probably some sort of safety net or safety zone or solace or whatever you want to say. But yeah, I spent a lot of my time there. And now what I love to do is to create stories that do the same thing for other people. Like, that's the goal. The goal isn't just for you to like the story. Like, if I wrote a story and someone said, yeah, I liked it, I'd be very disappointed. Not to say that I'm so perfect that everything I write you're going to love, but the goal is for you to love it. That's the goal, not just for you to like, that's not the goal. The goal is for you to love this story. That is the goal. Again, I want the blood diamond effect. That's what I'm going for. So at every step, it's like how... Firstly, there's the actual story itself. So there's the storylines of what happens, you know, person A, person B, there's all of that. That needs to be as gripping as is humanly possible. Then there's how the story itself is actually depicted in the words. So there's the actual flow of the story, and say, does he have a huge sword, or does he have a big sword, or a mammoth sword, or a gargantuan sword, or is it an epic sword, or is it a monstrous sword? What kind of sword is it? Because each of those words, although monstrous doesn't really mean big, but you see, like mammoth, gargantuan and big, they all mean the same thing, but they feel different, don't they? Yeah. They don't feel the same.
That's right.
So, but that's the thing. By choosing the right words, you paint images in people's minds.
Yeah. So painting images in people's minds, right? So with the work that you do, and we'll get on to the other stuff in a second, but with the work that you do, I love this idea of painting an image in someone's mind. So when you're talking to men, right, and you're allowing them to sit in their pain, for them to see where this uncomfort or discomfort, is actually coming from. You know, so like, how do you paint a picture for them of what they can become?
Well,
how does that bit work?
Well, that's about them painting the picture themselves.
Got it.
Because...
It's okay.
Yeah, that's about them painting the picture themselves. When I'm speaking to a guy, I will like look very closely and try to like analyze what it is that's going to trigger him and what he's emotionally affected by. But it needs to come from him. So the picture of who he can become, that needs to be something that he looks at himself. So there's a couple of things that I do. So number one is, I will ask them to write out a list of all of the ways that their life has been hurt by them being the way that they are. So, for instance, let's say this is a guy who can't find a date. He's going to think of all of the weeks and months that he's spent sitting on his own, or the times like his porn addiction. He's going to think about that and how much shame that gives him. Or he's going to think about the times when he went to bars and clubs and just sat there with his hands in his pockets because he was too scared to speak to people. Or the girl who he really liked, but he didn't have the courage to speak to, but his friend spoke to, and then his friend got with the girl, and he was like secretly in love with the girl, but his friend's with the girl, and he didn't do anything because he's an honourable guy and it's his friend's girlfriend, but he still liked her. He's like, gosh, I wish I'd have went first. So you're going to look at all of that stuff, and that stuff wants to be so painful that you're just like, nah, never again. But then on the flip side, then you build the ideal vision of what it is that you want. And then you look at that. So this guy would be, say, what sort of lifestyle would I be living? If I didn't have this stuff weighing me down, what would I be doing? Like, who would I be socializing with? Would I have some new hobbies that I'm currently too scared to do, but I would actually do those hobbies? Like, and what would that be like? And then you paint a picture. So you go away from the negative vision of how you've been operating, and then you go towards this beautiful, blissful, wonderful image of the ideal version of you.
Got it. Got it. It's interesting. Yesterday, we had Julia Volkova, Russian ballerina, well, I call her TEDx speaker. And, she is phenomenal, right? Also a dating coach, and went to Harvard to study human rights, did all that, impact social entrepreneur, and phenomenal. So we had this great conversation about Russia and about empathy. How can we learn about other people that we judge unfairly, but once we learn their story or a little bit about them, then we understand why we held the belief that we did, but not realizing that they are acting in a way which is in their highest interest to them. But when you look at the background, then you see, well, how could you act any differently? So if you're 0 to 8, you grew up in a children's home, whatever, right? So let's take me. I grew up in a children's home, 0 to 8, didn't have anyone looking after me, whatever it would be. Then is it such a stretch to say that, well, this guy doesn't really attach easily to people? Is it such a stretch to say, well, this guy, he doesn't seem to open up very much? Or, is it such a stretch that you might say, well, like this guy, he could be so much more, but if he would just open his mouth and talk, then I could actually help and guide him to be something else, something better, something like he was born to be. So we went through all of these things. So with you and the work that you do with the men, like, do you spend much time, like, kind of going back and seeing what held them back or what set up a belief pattern in the first place that then is perpetuated forwards into, not confident with women, not confident with themselves, not confident holding conversations with other people, and so on? What comes up for you when I ask you that?
Okay, do I go back and help? So you're asking, if I'm with some guy, do I then try to go back into his life to see where this stuff actually came from?
If there's something blocking him, yeah. Yeah.
So I will usually speak to them about their childhoods.
Okay.
And then what sort of stuff happened in their childhoods. But the thing is this, a lot of guys don't really know how to answer questions like you've just asked.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who, for one reason or another, are quite aware of their emotions. Yeah. But what I've come to realize from coaching these men is that most people actually are kind of disassociated from their emotions. So you can say to him something like, hey, so where did this start? And he won't have a clue. Yeah. So then you kind of have to dig it out of him. So what usually happens is we'll be, say, speaking like over weeks or so, months, and we have like these coaching calls, and I listen closely to things that they say that they don't even realize, like that things that they say that give away things about them that they haven't even realized actually give things away about them. And then like you point that out and go, what is that about? So for instance, a guy might be speaking to some people and is like, oh yeah, so I spoke to him for a couple of minutes and then I left. And I was like, okay, but why did you leave? He's like, well, I had to leave. I was like, no, but why did you actually have to leave? You could have stayed and spoken to them for another 20 minutes or so. Why did you naturally assume that you had to leave? Like, did they actually say to you, please go away? Did they look like they weren't happy in your presence? And he's like, oh, no, they actually were happy in my presence. So there's something going on with you, which is that you feel like you are at danger of alienating yourself from people or boring people or annoying them or something like that. So you have to get out before it actually goes bad. It's like, oh my God, yeah, I actually do that. It's kind of things like that where you have to listen out for clues about who they are and then pounce on them and then show them what you've seen. If you see it.
Yeah, got it. I understand perfectly. Wow. And so the thing about men, right, as you mentioned before, and then we'll get on to women after this, my man. So the thing about men, if there are any stereotypical things about men, what would they be and how do you overcome them? So for example, you've just mentioned that a lot of men find it difficult to because they're disconnected, from that emotion. So then it's a case of you digging. So the challenge would be, well, they're disconnected from their emotions. So the way to overcome it is to ask questions and listen actively for what they're saying and what they're not saying, right? And then when you see that space, when you feel that, ask them about that space and you go into it that way. So what else has come up, or what comes up for you when I ask you the question, right? Because what is triggered by the question, not necessarily the answer as it should be in your mind. But what else comes up for you when I say, men, what have been some of the biggest challenges working with men and how have you overcome them?
Challenges for me or challenges for them?
For them. We'll get on to you. Yeah.
All right. So the biggest challenges for them are, number one, if you're a man, you feel like you're supposed to be perfect and you don't have any fears or insecurities. Like men aren't allowed to be scared to do stuff at all. So let's say if you look at the world of dating, for instance, the concept of being a dating coach, there are many people who think that's a bad thing because like you're helping men to manipulate women. That's what you're doing. And they're tricking these women into doing something that they wouldn't naturally do, which is actually a load of rubbish. It's like nobody tells you, unless you have like an uncle or something who he knows what he's doing and he takes you under his wing. Well, like, nobody told me how to, say, meet women. No one told me at all. And it's a huge part of your life because that means that then dictates, okay, what quality of partner will you have? What quality of relationship will you have? Will you have an amazing family? Or will you get divorced and then you don't get to see your children, or you're splitting custody and blah, blah, blah? It's actually huge, but nobody shows you how. And you're meant to just know what to do. Yeah. You're just meant to know. So something that these guys really struggle with is that they feel like there's a wall, and the wall's like this, and they're here and women are on the other side, and they don't know how to cross the chasm. They have no idea what to do. And the world at large has no real intention of showing them what to do. I would say that's the main thing that they struggle with. Also, the fact that, say, girls will get together. Let's say, okay, here's a good example. If you and your wife split up, what's likely to happen, assuming you're both as distraught as each other, she's going to seek comfort and solace in her friends. And they're going to have pizza night and ice cream night. And she's going to do tons of crying and she'll be with them. And in 6 months' time, she might not be perfect, but she's going to, do great. However, what's likely to happen with you is that you're going to be dealing with it on your own and you're not going to have a support system. Yeah. So then, like, a lot of men are just dealing with problems that they don't know how to speak to people about, or they're too scared to speak to people about because, again, you're kind of meant to be stoic and like James Bond. And that's a thing that they deal with. It's they don't know who to turn to, and there's a lot of shame.
Got it. Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I would say I observe the same thing. With men, it's just men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? So men, we deal with stuff by going into our cave and working it out for ourselves, and then come back saying, "Hey, I've worked it out." Whereas, as you mentioned, the feminine is that, well, let me gather my group. Let's talk about this. Let's discuss it. Let's analyze it, and let's come up with answers, or allow me to see the answers. But it's in communication, in cooperation with others, whereas guys, it tends to be this lone wolf, right? Go into his cave and work it out for himself, and that in a relationship, I know the woman feels like, in a normal relationship, that the guy is deserting me, and then the guy is thinking like, why she keep chasing me into the cave? I want to get away and think about this. Why she keep pursuing me? But look, it brings you on to the question. So what have been the biggest challenges for you doing the work that you've been doing with men on this occasion?
The biggest challenges is that the biggest one I can think of is that, let's say you're selling iPhones, for argument's sake. iPhones don't require anybody to do any work. In fact, iPhones just very quickly and immediately make your life easier. Like, once you know how to actually use the thing, your life is just improved because of the iPhone, and that's just it. There's nothing for you to do. However, the work that I do requires that a guy face his demons. But many of us don't want to face our demons because they're called demons for a reason. They're demonic and they're scary. They're intimidating. They make you wake up in a cold sweat at night. So the biggest challenge for me that I can think of is the fact that many men, or most men, are inherently terrified of doing the things that are needed to do in order for them to get to where they want to get to. That's the biggest challenge. But that wouldn't even be just men. I mean, that's people in general, really. Facing your demons is a tough thing to do.
Okay, now, if you've been watching the show, that you may or may not have been, so what SpeakuP Monday is really about is going deeper, right? So we've got the surface stuff, which is great, But we want to go deeper because through going deeper, then people get to see themselves in us or in you or in the person that they're watching. And that's where the inspiration comes from, you know, as opposed sometimes to seeing this person who we believe might be perfect put on a pedestal. And we can't, it's hard to relate because it's like, well, do they have these sorts of challenges? It doesn't look like they do. There's something wrong with me. Or do they have these sort of challenges? Maybe yes, maybe no, but they look like they don't. You know, so I don't know if I can trust him. So the question that I'm going to ask you in a different way, and let's see where you take it. You know, so you mentioned about the demons, right? And after we will move on to the other things, right? So what were or are some of your demons? Because when you're working with people, like I coach people, you coach people, and I love what you said, right? Because for us to be good at what we do, meaning for us to connect with other human beings, we also have to be vulnerable at times when we don't really want to be, you know. And there's a ton of times where I can tell you right now about me where it's like I should be X in my mind, but in reality I'm not. You know, I'll give you an example. Like yesterday, you know, and I spoke about it last night, you know, that I consider myself to be, you know, an enlightened person in some ways, but mastery is my thing. I don't believe in perfection, I believe in mastery, right? So check this one out. So my girl, my partner, Marina, my partner in life, business and everything, you know, like she's having a number because she's upset because things are not going the way that she wanted them to go because she's very organized. Me, not that I'm disorganized, but I don't necessarily go well with organizing everything perfectly, right? But she's like, if there's an appointment at 9 o'clock, she'll be ready at 8. You know, if there's an appointment for me at 9 o'clock, I'll be ready at 8:45, right? To give you an example. But our daughter was having this thing because we're all running late, right? And Marina's upset. My eldest daughter is upset. And there's a go-kart coming. And they go out to the outside. We're pulling the gate for the go-kart to come, and they're having this number. This thing is going on. And I'm there like, you know, kind of being detached but cool. Right, so coolly detached. Okay, but I'm there physically. So what happens then is that at one point it's like, oh, we need to comb her hair. So Rob, get a comb, please. I need to stand here for the go-kart. Get a comb. So I run inside. I come up being a typical dad. I come with the wrong comb, right? Don't even know my daughter's comb, right? There's 3 combs to choose from. I choose the wrong one twice. So now by this time, Rita's getting pissed off. He's like, Rob, give me and at this point, my eldest daughter turns to me and then starts to shout at me. You know, Dad, my comb, and she storms off. She gets her phone. She's 6 years of age, and she comes over. Dad, it's the pink one. And I crack. I snap my finger and I go, don't you talk to me like that. So I lost it. Right, this guy who's in control, this guy who's got it all going on, right? I lost it there and then, and everyone knew it. So I'm supposed to be this coach, this guy who, you know, knows how to master his emotions, all this other stuff. But no, when push came to shove, I was left wanting, for sure, no doubt about it. And later on, I felt guilty because now I think she cried after that, and I'm like, oh man, you know, what did I do? So again, but it's about me calling myself on my own shit too. Right, and say, you know what, Rob, this one you definitely could have handled in a much better way. And when she came home, I apologized to her, and sure, you know, like next time, you know, I know we're going to be tested again. I look to improve at what I do. Right, so that's one of my little demons that happened yesterday. Right, so for you, you know, part of what you do is guiding men. Right, I also did a men's circle for over a year, and one of the first ones here, and that was like up to 30 guys. Right, so I get part of what it takes and the vulnerability that is needed to deal with men. Right, and I know that it can be really challenging. So then the question I'm asking you is that so in this sort of context, you know, like what has been, you know, one of the most challenging things for you to deal with in terms of your demons, and how did you overcome it, if you overcame it?
But do you mean in terms of me coaching men or just me as a person?
Well, they're both connected, right?
Okay, so Well, I tell you what, I'll just tell you my biggest demons. That'd be easiest for me.
There you go.
All right, so biggest one I would say is extreme anger, which obviously they say like fear leads to anger. So the anger is based about fear, but extreme anger. So at some point when I was younger, I turned to anger and rage to protect myself from, the world at large. So I felt like the world didn't understand me, stuff like that. So angry. And that anger is actually still inside me. But the thing is this. When I was, say, up to the age of about maybe 17, I was very, temperamental and explosive. So if you knew me before then, you would have seen me lose my temper a lot. Now, the temper is actually still there. And truth be told, I'm reasonably sure in saying that I'm in the top 3 or 4% of tempers in the world. Yeah. I've never met anyone who has a bigger temper than me. I actually haven't. Now, the thing is this, though. I have control over my temper. I learned that over the years. So most people who've known me as an adult have never seen me lose my temper at all. But it's actually still there. But the point is that the anger that actually fuels the temper, it's nowhere near as strong as it used to be. But then it's actually still my anger. So I've still got tons of anger inside me. So there is that. So something that is hard is the fear that causes that anger, it pops up and makes me not want to do things or makes me doubt things. I'm seeing someone and if she's listening, all right, well, she's going to hear something she didn't realise, but I'm seeing someone and I slept over at her place. And it was all great. It was great, slept over, blah, blah, blah. And then in the morning, I went to kind of put my arm around her. But she was on the other side of the bed. And then I caught myself thinking, oh, she doesn't want me to put my arm around her. She's on the other side of the bed. And then I had this feeling of insecurity about whether or not, she would accept or reject me if I did. So I have feelings like that where the old me who felt like he isn't good enough will raise his head and then, I will deal with him. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking to my inner child. So that anger is basically my inner child. So for anyone who isn't listening, the idea being that once you're an adult, the version of you that existed when you were a child is actually still there, and that's the one who gets triggered by things and annoyed and scared and blah, blah, blah. The imprint is still there. So I spend a lot of time talking to him, but that is actually very tough because it took about a good couple of years to cultivate a relationship where he liked me because he actually hated me. So this is odd. I'm having conversations in my own head talking to me as a kid. And we're just talking back and forth. And he hated me at first for years. Well, not years, a baby, about a year. But then he started to like me. But then it's if I don't spend enough time with him, he doesn't actually get happy. Or I say I'm in the sauna. So I go to the gym here and the gym has a sauna. I sit in the sauna. So then when I'm in the sauna, after a few minutes, my inner child is scared because he doesn't think he can do it. Because he doesn't think that he is good enough to be, a strong and fit person like all the other people at the gym. So then I'm speaking to him no, don't worry, it'll be okay. We've got this. We're going to do this. Are you sure? Yeah, we'll be okay. But are you sure though? Because I'm scared and loads of that. So that's a big thing.
Brother, man, I just want to acknowledge you, man. It takes balls to do what you just did. You may not think it, or maybe you do, maybe you don't. Irrelevant. In my where I'm coming from, you're a tough looking guy, and for you to lay it down as it is. That's empowering, man. And if there are any other guys watching this, they're going to get that too. It's this thing about leading by example. And being fearless and cultivating this relationship with your inner child, right? It's so powerful, man. It's such an important thing, and it hits me in the heart, man. That's really cool, man. I want to give you a hug, brother.
Thank you.
Mamma mia!
Thank you.
Wow. We can hug. That was a sitting next to each other hug. For those of you who haven't watched, man. Respect, brother.
Thank you.
Love it.
I appreciate it.
Love it, man. And this heart of yours, is kind of what brought us together, right? So for those of you, SpeakuP Monday, we've got different streams, 3 of them, and but they're booked up quite a bit of time now, especially the one with the live studio audience that we do on a Monday. 6 to 8 weeks, and Kieren contacted me saying, "Look, Rob, we've got this really important mission, that I really want to get out there. Like, can we do like a a Q&A, ahead of it to help push it, to help bring awareness to it, right?" And we said, "Look, unfortunately, it's going to be too long because the campaign would have ended by the time that we start, right?" But I recognized and felt, that it was really part of your heart, And the thing about heart is that, as I learned the other day, is that, the heart is like 5 times more powerful. The resonance and frequency that comes from the heart is 5 times more powerful than it is from the head. Like the head is like about 1,000 and the heart is like 5,000. I learned this yesterday with this incredible woman when we were having this group discussion. So when I felt the frequency of what you were saying and how you're saying, I'm like, man, we have to find a way. And then that's hence the reason why we're sitting here now. And look, but I guess the thing here is that, I always love to know who people are, because once you know who someone is at their heart, then it's much easier to hear what they have to say. Whereas if you come on like a show and you just say, I'm this, I'm that, I want this, I want that, and there's no connection, man. It's just like, yeah, okay, and, but like now it's like, okay, I get who you are. Or I get a piece of you, and I love that piece. And it reminds me of me, like the inner child conversation. Reminds me of me. The thing of, like, does she want me? Doesn't she want me? That comes up too. I've been with my girl for 8 years, But sometimes you're there, it's like, does she want it? Does she not? So we all have these things, but then it's about how that self-talk and how we talk to each other, ourselves, the inner child, and all the rest of that. So I love hearing it, right? And it inspires me, actually. And the guys that are watching this, mate, contact this guy, and we'll get into that in a second. But please tell us about, what originally brought us together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Anita, and yeah, so let's hear it.
All right. So the thing that brought us together is, we spoke about me being a author. So I've written a book which is called Preeta's Web of Chaos. So it's about a little girl called Preeta. It's her web of chaos. I always have to clarify that because people go, Preeta's Web of Chaos? What is that? What does that even mean? So she's 8 and she's incredibly special but doesn't realise it. Doubts herself quite a lot. And in her dreams, she has created her own universe, her own kingdom. And without giving away too much, she's created her own kingdom. And the long and short of it is that throughout the course of the book, she encounters some very scary, harrowing situations that in her mind are too much for her to handle. They're too much. Something that she says to herself and to people constantly is, I'm just a little girl. She says that all the time. But she's a little girl that's been placed in a position of extreme responsibility. So even though she's 8 dealing with, like, basically she's elite. She's elite. She's dealing with the sorts of issues that a head of state is going to have to deal with. That's a level of responsibility she has. Yeah. So you think of, like, I don't know, your Donald Trumps or your Joe Biden or whatever, head of state, the kind of issues they need to deal with, she has to deal with those sorts of issues. And it all scary. But thing is, the situation she's in, it's not just scary in terms of, it's complex and I'm a little girl. It's also genuinely scary as well, because there's scary stuff that's happening. And throughout the course of the book, her personal image slowly changes. Slowly. And by the end, her personal image is one of, I'm actually one of the most powerful entities to ever exist.
Wow.
But like ever. So she goes from I'm just a little girl to effectively I'm a goddess manifested in human form.
Ooh.
That it's that journey. But then it's about how does she actually get from there to there.
Far out. Yeah. So, where did this come from?
Where did it come from? So, I wrote a book that I didn't release a couple of years ago, which was about a grown man and a little girl living together during the apocalypse. Like, the world ends and they find each other. You know, like in some kind of apocalyptic zombie type movie, strangers who don't know each other will just end up in each other's lives because they're trying to survive in a supermarket or something. That's what happens with the man and her. He's like 30 and she's 8, but Preeta was that little girl. Now, my mum said to me a couple of years ago, she said, why don't you write a series of stories that star Preeta as the heroine? And I was like, Mother, that's a fantastic idea. There we go. That's a great idea. So then the thing was this, right? So you asked where it came from. This is where it came from. Yeah. In the book, Preeta, in the first story that I wrote, which I actually do plan on releasing at some point, but Preeta was 8. And I made her 8 for a very specific reason, which is because I wanted her to be small enough to be like cute and lovable, but mature enough for you to have a proper conversation with her, because you can have a proper conversation with an 8-year-old. You know, like you can talk to them back and forth. You might think they're immature as heck, but you can talk to them. But you can talk to them. And I also wanted her to be light enough for it to be feasible for the man to pick her up and run with her and carry her while he's running from obstacles. Right? So she was 8 for a very specific reason. But then when I wrote this book, I still wanted her to be 8. So I was like, all right, well, how the heck? Because basically there's going to be a series of books, but how the heck do I make her still 8 and having a storyline that takes place, bearing in mind that this is before the other story? How does that happen? I was like, well, what if everything that happens in her dreams? Like, oh, okay, there you go. We can display some of the time if it's actually in her dreams. Like, great. So then there's that. So then it's all right. So what's actually happening in her dreams? What the heck? By the way, the reason why I came up with dreams was because about 10 years ago, my best friend had an idea for a book called Corrie's Nightmare, which was a boy having adventures in his dreams. And he never did anything with it, but that idea was kind of sat with me. Oh, okay, Corrie's Nightmare, adventures in his dreams. So then when I came up with this, like, okay, I kind of put the two together. But then it's, all right, what on earth is actually happening in her dreams? So I was like, all right, well, she's got a kingdom. Right, kingdom's being attacked. By who? So then, all right, well, coming up with who's attacking the kingdom, but then what actually does the kingdom look like? So who's in this kingdom? What is this world that she's actually created? Then it's all right, so what actually happens step by step by step? Like, what is the actual storyline? And then it kind of grew and it grew and it grew and it evolved. And the whole idea of it being her journey of transformation, that was very subconscious. I didn't consciously decide that at all. Like, that was just, I don't know, my soul or whatever speaking. But yeah, it just kind of became that with her encountering these obstacles. And every step of the way, I've tried to make it as exciting as possible. If you happen to know me, it's like there's little Easter eggs in the book to either things that I have loved, like other books I've loved growing up. Like there's quite a few Roald Dahl references in the book, for instance, loads. But they're subtle though. So you'd have to actually know that if you don't know, you just go over your head. But there's loads of little things like that. And like people who I know are in the book as well, like my best friend's daughter is Preeta's best friend, for instance, like little things like that. But yeah, that's where the book itself actually came from. And then from writing the book, I spent a year planning the storyline. Literally a year. Wow. Because, well, the thing is, it's like if you're going to write a book that's set in the real world, then it's just like, okay, so guy meets girl, blah, 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 blah. But you don't have to, let's say, you don't have to come up with the fact that he's English and she's French and English people do da-da-da, because it's already set. But if you're writing a book that takes place in a world that doesn't exist, you have to create the actual world. Like with Game of Thrones. You know, the Starks and the Lannisters and how they all interact. So I spent a year doing that as well as the storyline. Then spent another year actually writing the book itself. And it's interesting because I spent a lot of time planning the story. But then I've also it's like I like to be free for ideas to come to me on the bounce while I'm actually writing. For instance, the idea to put my niece in the book, that actually happened when I'd started writing. So all the year I was planning the story, my niece wasn't in it at all. But then I reached a point where in the first chapter, like Preeta's at school, and I was like, yeah, she needs a best friend, doesn't she? It's like, let's put my niece in. So then I was
And then one just becomes the other, and like, but the question that comes up is like, are you Preeta? Meaning, like, you said it's subconscious, right? And just to go with me here, like, so if I look at your journey, I see parallels, right? I see parallels of you start in one place, which almost like a hero's journey, right? Which is a guy who doesn't fit in, anger, pouring out, not knowing how to master it, not knowing how to control it, not fitting in anywhere, and all of those stories that kind of happened into, like growing up into this spirit. You may not be there yet, or you may not think that you're there. But then the outcome is you becoming like the best version of yourself. Just a few things which I just saw, so I thought I'd ask you.
I mean, like, I might be. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you say, am I Preeta? Maybe, probably. I don't know. There's definitely parallels. The thing is, I mean, when I create a story, I'm trying, the goal is to just create something that doesn't exist at all and has never existed. That's the goal. Obviously, you never really achieve that because, your past experiences are going to taint it. But my goal is to create the most original thing of all time. That's the goal. So when people say like, oh, what were you inspired by? It's like, I'm not trying to be inspired by anything. I'm trying to do something very new. Like, my friend had the idea for that book about the guy having adventures in his dreams. Fine. But beyond that, the goal has been for it to be completely fresh. But am I Preeta? Probably. Maybe. I don't know.
So then you have a campaign attached to it, though, right? So can you tell us a little bit about it?
All right. So the book is Preeta's Web of Chaos, and the campaign is the Web of Chaos movement. Now, the long and short of it is that from speaking to people about the book, something that I heard quite a few times is, hey, this isn't just a book, this is a movement. This isn't just a book, this is a movement. Oh, movement? Like me? Movement? Oh my God. Oh God. And it's like, but it's like part of me really liked the idea. There was a part of me that liked the idea, like a movement. Oh, sounds kind of It's part of me that liked the idea. Another part that's like scared and intimidated. But I couldn't really get away from that. I just started niggling away at the back of my head. And so like I've got in the book, like, say, Preeta says she's just a little girl. And then when people say like, oh, this is a movement, I'm like, nah, it's not. But then I look back at lines like that and I think, what possessed me to actually write, I'm just a little girl. I'm just a little girl. It's like, like, it kind of is a movement, isn't it? Like, this is actually bigger than I consciously thought it is. And the long and short of it is that I have a team together and we're doing two things. So number one, we have a Kickstarter campaign to fund the book, and that campaign is underway. Now, the reason we have the campaign is like, firstly, we're going to self-publish, but secondly, the main thing is that we want to help women, girls, ethnic minorities worldwide, and we want to send them copies of the book. So we're putting together a list of basically places like Oprah Winfrey, she's got her Leadership Academy for girls in Kenya, places like that, or schools and universities and maybe even like women's prisons, things like that. We want to send lots of copies to these places so that people can be inspired by the story. But the book itself is designed to lead into the Web of Chaos movement, which is us creating a community, a learning hub, a safe space for people who want to learn to become the best versions of themselves and cultivate true self-love. We're in the early stages of putting that together. So exactly what form that's going to take place, we're not actually too sure. It's looking like we're definitely going to be on TikTok. Is there going to be a podcast? Not sure. We're going to create apps, etc. That we're still working out, but the first hurdle is getting the book out and then creating the buzz and the attention.
Got it. You know, and I guess the question that comes up is, so why did you decide to look at ethnic minorities? And that side, there's obviously lots of very worthy causes and charities behind it. So why did that one stick up for you?
Well, because why? Well, it's kind of like this. Let's say there's a train, right? And the train is stored on a track. And you've got 100 people who are pushing the train. And because 100 people are pushing the train, now the train's slowly moving. Does that mean that one extra person shouldn't come and help push this train now because the train's slowly moving? Yeah. You know, it's like, yeah, work is being done, but why not more? And here's the way I feel. I spent years working in London at jobs that people thought were really sexy. For instance, I worked for Samsung. I was the EU content manager for Samsung, right? And now that just sounds good, doesn't it? Like, I managed a team that put the content. For anyone who doesn't work online, content is the either the words or the images or the video that goes on the website. All of the interesting stuff that people care about, which is why you've gone to the site. So we're managing content that goes onto Samsung's 30 websites across Europe. Oh, yeah. Oh, works for Samsung. Oh. But what are you doing when you work for Samsung? You convince people to buy a phone. It's like, that's it, really. Like, buy the new Samsung Galaxy S whatever. That is effectively it. For as much cachet as you get working in the job and as cool as you think you are, you've convinced someone to buy a phone. Stuff like this, what we're doing with the Webber House movement, we're actually changing people's lives. This is a much bigger thing. In my work as like a men's coach, I've had guys say, Kieren, you've been the biggest influence on my life ever, and you've saved my life. And here's the thing, there are human beings who will exist in future because I coached their dad and gave the dad the experience or the confidence to meet the mum and therefore actually make that human. So like in 20 years time, there'll be people who will exist purely as a result of the work that I've done. And to like tie this back to like the Web of Chaos thing, it's a similar thing. There's, say, I've got nieces. I don't have like a daughter yet, but I've got 3 nieces who are 18, 19, gosh, and 20. God, grown up so fast. And well, it's actually kind of scary. Like, I remember when they were just born. But they deal with feelings like they're not good enough, you know, or lack of self-worth, comparing themselves to other people on social media. Maria Nikki, who is part of the movement with me, she overcame binge eating. Looking back, I think I used to binge eat as well, but I've got a fast metabolism, so it didn't really show, but I did have some sort of eating disorder. But hers was really bad, and she would eat loads and loads of food because she felt terrible about herself. Then afterwards, she'd feel even worse because she's eating all the food. So she'd go to the gym and she would work out for hours and like way more than she should do to burn off all of the food that she'd eaten. And she felt like she had to be a stick figure model. Like if she wasn't, she has to be tiny, and she's naturally got a full figure. No one in their right mind would ever call her fat, but she thought she was fat. Actually, some people did call her fat, to be fair. She feels, or felt, not anymore, she's gotten over it, but she felt all this shame and guilt and remorse, and it hurt her ability to interact with people. And there's so many people like that. Why not help?
That's right. Question comes up, which is through people like us, right? Which I call bridges, right? And people that don't necessarily fit in, right? Because again, you and I, for those who are just tuning in, like there's like a Caucasian part of us and a black part of us, right? And in some ways we're displayed. Perhaps now it's more unified, and we realize that our walk is about bridging the gap between the two, which is not really two, it's much more than that, because it's not just black and white, right? So maybe there's some people watching here now, maybe they've got mixed race kids, or maybe there's kids watching this, right, which are feeling in the place that we were, right, not fitting in anywhere, like having maybe challenges with identity, which is beyond just the usual identity, because if there's a usual identity, then it's maybe I am Caucasian and I have a problem with how I look, or I am black, I have a problem with how I look. But this one is in the middle. It's like I'm too white for the black world, and I'm too white for the black world and too black for the...
I used to say that actually to myself, yeah.
There you go. So is there any advice that comes up that you could give to people in that position?
All right. Yeah. So here's the thing. Somebody said to me, what would you say if you could meet like your younger self? And someone said that to me quite recently. Yeah. So something I'd say if I could meet my younger self is everybody's scared. Yeah. So what does that mean? It's like when I grew up, I felt like I was constantly auditioning or being interviewed. So, you walk into an audition and let's assume that they're not friendly, but it's still an audition. You walk in, it's like, okay, yeah, Robert, okay, stand over there and then do your audition. And they stood there and they've got so we don't like his cadence to his voice. We don't like this. We don't like the way he's doing. But I'm constantly auditioning and constantly being judged. But in this audition kind of hypothetical scenario, they're all on this team here and they know what they need and they're all perfectly fine and confident. And you're the one who's in the position of weakness. And what I would say is that everybody is scared. Everybody. When I was growing up, by the time I was about 13 or 14, every teenager I knew was claiming to have had sex. Yeah. They were all saying it, right? And if you hadn't done it, I said it too. And if you hadn't done it, you were the biggest loser on earth. And when I think back, they were all virgins. Like, there were one or two, but no, they were lying. But life is actually kind of like that, where people are looking to other people to say, oh, like, who are we meant to be? What is actually cool? And they're kind of fitting into that. So to that person who's mixed race and feels like, where do I belong? Do I belong here or do I belong there? It's actually just be you quite unapologetically, like really unapologetically. You be you really unapologetically and people will come around. So the person who said to me, oh, you sound like a white person. Here's the thing. If I had more confidence back then, I'd been like, this is the way I talk. It's how it is. And I would have just like carried on, not even have to get angry, not about getting angry, but you just... be me, just be me with my white sounding voice. And then after a while, I'd be like, oh, Kieren's really cool. I guess that's a cool and acceptable way of being. But because when he said that, I kind of retreated into my shell and I'm kind of like giving credence to this whole notion that there's a certain way that you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and that something's wrong.
Yeah, and that something was wrong. I'm giving credence to that by allowing that comment to affect my confidence. So to that person who is listening, just actually be you. Like a good example, this isn't necessarily about being mixed race or anything, but I read loads of comic books. Well, I don't really read them anymore, but I read them from like age 4 to 27. Like in my heart, I'm a comic book reader. I've bought so many over the years. I am. When I go to the cinema to watch the latest Marvel film, I have a sense of pride because I remember when nobody cared about Marvel at all. And they're like, I used to like this stuff well before it was cool. But anyway, what's the point I was making about, hold on, I go to the cinema to watch the latest Marvel film. Have I lost my point? No. What was I saying before then?
Yeah, just breathe.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about, was fitting in. What we spoke about.
That's right. No, got it. Yeah. So, I will speak to women about superheroes. Like, who's your favourite superhero? Do you think Wolverine could beat Captain America in a fight? But you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to talk to girls about superheroes. But it's like, who said? Like, somebody just said you're not supposed to do that, so people just kind of believe it. But there's nothing saying that you can't do that. You can. Just actually be you and see what the heck happens. You know, so that is what I would say. Embrace the things that make you weird or peculiar or unusual or whatever.
Got it. And so if I asked you, again, I don't ask the questions, brother. I speak them. So if I asked you, okay, so you're here on the planet for some time, 30-something years, I'm guessing. And, you know, so now it comes down to, you know, you're at the pearly gates, right? Lord, I knows where this one came from, but stay with me, right? You're at the pearly gates, and so then let's call it God. Now, God is saying, okay, Kieren, all right, now, what is it that you have done in your life, and what are your greatest strengths? So what is it that you have done in your life, and what are your greatest strengths? Now,
what have I done today or when I die?
Let's go forward. Let's make it a bit easier. So if you go forward in time, maybe what we're talking about today with Preeta, right? Something has moved and shifted. So in a way, you're giving us where perhaps you'd like it to go. But also, what it is that I want to hear from you what you feel your biggest strengths are.
Okay. I got you. I'm with you.
Beautiful.
We're on the same page.
Yes.
Right? We are on the same page. So what have I done? So by the time I die, there's a generation of humans that look at me like I look at Stan Lee. Stan Lee from Marvel Comics. I am certain for the final 30 years of his life, he couldn't walk the street because people would run up to him like, oh my God, you know, Spider-Man, I read all your comics, and they'd cry and they'd want to hug him, and that's right? That's like Kieren-Paul Brown. His stories have captivated me. I've loved reading them so much. By the time I die, there's a core group of people who are my fans, and they believe I'm the greatest writer of all time. They do, right? So there is that.
Love it.
Also, there's gonna be I'll have like a mentor-mentee relationship. It will be very informal. I figure she'll be a woman. I'll be like about 80 and she'll be in her mid-30s or so. And, you know, I will guide her in her career, and she'll get married, and I'll have a little dance with her at the wedding and stuff like this. That's going to happen as well. There's going to be that. Also, Preeta from this book, there's going to be so many people, mainly girls, well, people in general, who are going to be deeply inspired by Preeta, because she's an absolutely incredible character. Like, to me, Preeta is actually a person. She is. And I'm just trying to reveal her to the world because I love her so much. I want the world to love her too. So there's that. Preeta Patel will be a thing. And what have I done? There'll be people who, as a result of the Web of Chaos movement, have way better lives than they did before. There's going to be people who are like, you know what, I'm actually a CEO of X, Y, and Z company. I started my own company because of this. Or, you know something, I had an accident and I was in a wheelchair, and the doctor said there was like a 2% chance of me learning to walk again. But I said, you know what, I'm learning to walk. And guess what? I actually learned to walk, and now I do karate. And this is me doing my high kicks. There's going to be a lot of things like that. What are my strengths? My strengths, well, I'm unable to give up.
Ooh,
like,
nice.
Nice. Unable, really. Yeah. Like, I can give up in the moment. Like, let's say I can be in the gym and I can, like, and then be too tired and give up then. But in general, like, am I going to come back to the gym the next day? Yeah, I am. I refuse to give up, and I've always been like that. There's always been something inside me that won't let me give up, and thank God for that, by the way. But there is that. What are my other strengths? I think I've got a lot of empathy. So every now and then you will see, and I think this helps me as a writer as well, but every now and then you'll see, like, there'll be someone who goes crazy and shoots up a school or something, and people go, I cannot imagine how that would happen. And then I'll read the person's story, and it's like, well, he was bullied, harassed every day for the first 10 years, first 15 years of his life. He felt lonely and isolated, and then he shot up a school. Yeah, I can see how that would happen. I can see people in situations that I haven't actually been in, and I can feel like I can empathize with what's actually going on with them. So I'd say that is a big strength. Another big strength is that I'm willing to take chances. Yeah, willing to take chances. I've always been prepared to take chances. I'm not completely fearless. I wish I was completely fearless. I really do. I wish I had no fear. I do have fear, but I will walk towards my fears and, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Got it. And where do you think you never giving up? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, okay. So I've got a couple of ideas. Number one, there's my cousin, Darren. And when we were growing up, we would always play video games like Street Fighter against each other. And we were always trying to beat each other. We were always trying. And I would see him once a week on the weekends. Remember I said like weekends I would be with black people? Well, in the weekends I'd be with him in the black part of Birmingham. And we would play, or he would come to stay with me in the white part. But either way, midweek I'd be playing Street Fighter to get better to beat him on the weekend. Right? It was very important for me to get better than him. Yeah. So that was part of it. That's number one. But also number two. So I think it has a lot to do with my mum, because growing up, I was in so many situations where my mum would give me a talk and we'd be talking for like an hour or so. And, you know, something that I've done. God knows what I did. Maybe I was like caught shoplifting or something like that. And it would happen. It happened so many times. But she refused to give up. She refused. She's like, she had this energy of, we are going to get to the bottom of this. There was no part of it I'd ever given up. Like, I've seen over the years that there's some mothers who they give up on their sons or their daughters for whatever reason. Like, oh, my son's a drug addict, I've given up. Yeah. My daughter is just like this, I've given up. My mum refused to give up. Never. Like, there was... Didn't even... Like, if her fortitude was like a... I don't know, a building, it was like a tank or something, like... There was no chance of her giving up. It wasn't even tough for her to do. I'm refusing. You're my son. I refuse to give up on you. We are going to get to the bottom of this.
Love it.
And I just realised that all the years I was with her and she had that kind of energy, that had to have affected me. I mean, my little brother went through something similar years ago. And I didn't realise it, but I was basically acting with him like my mum was with me. We're giving up. We're gonna sort this out. We are gonna sort this out. So I think that's probably got something to do with her. I think.
Man, super powerful. And the last question from me is, you know, mindset. Ooh. So what I'm picking up with you, and maybe the last question kind of hit it too, you know, this thing about mindset. You know, and whether this, whichever comes up, whether it's in the confines of coaching men or just yourself, you know, like if I ask you, you know, what does mindset mean to you and how do you cultivate it? What would you say?
Okay, I would say that mindset is the way that you think about yourself and the world and how you react to things that happen to you. So, for instance, you go for a job interview and they say, sorry, we're going to go another way. What does that do to you? Does that crush you? Does that destroy you? Or do you think, okay, well, what can I actually do better? I would say that's how I perceive mindset to be. Then how do you cultivate mindset? There's so many ways to go. But one thing I would say is to make a note of the kind of person that you want to be. And who is that person and what does that person do? And you check in regularly to see if you're in line with that person. And if you're not, then you don't hate on yourself and beat on yourself, but you're aware of it and then you don't do it again in future. So like one thing I did was I used to be too much of a pushover because I really wanted people to like me. I really wanted people to like me because, oh, you know, I'm black and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to be the angry black guy as well. You don't want to be the angry, the angry 50 Cent, I'll shoot you in the face, black man stereotype. You don't want to be that, so then you overcompensate by going too far in another direction.
I feel you there, one. I feel you.
Yeah. So, but then it's like, okay, looking at myself, and when I catch myself doing those things, actually I'm kind of not like 99% past that now, but still, you catch yourself doing those things and then you course correct. It's like, no, okay, so I've done that here. I now want to do this. So I'd say that's it. Know who you want to be and be aware of your actions and check in constantly to see if you're in line with the kind of person that you want to be.
Nice, man. Love it. Kieren-Paul, what a Brown, what a pleasure, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, and look, so in a minute, what we're going to do is the way we end the show is, if there's anything that you want to say or bring up that maybe hasn't been discussed, or maybe you want to reinforce, something that has been discussed, in about a minute and a half's time, you're going to have a chance to actually do it. So maybe have a think on what that would look like or feel like, right? But in the meantime, so everybody here and there and there and there, low battery, just push the OK button and it will be OK at the bottom one. There you go. You're in. Yeah. So SpeakuP Monday, as you know. So we have 3 streams every week. So the audience version is on Monday, 6:30 here at Tropical Nomad. And feel free to come and join us as a studio audience. It's a phenomenal experience. That's one. Then number 2 is 7 a.m. on Tuesday. It's early, people. 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. on Tuesday morning.
You're not missing about, are you?
Oh, no, not missing about. I know, but in the US, it's like 4 o'clock on the West Coast and 7 o'clock on the East Coast in the afternoon, evening on Monday, the day before. So basically, it gives access to that American market, and so that's when we do that one. And then the final one is random time. So today it was Tuesday. Though tomorrow we also have Freedom Day Bali. So this is another brother, right, Richard Harrington, and so he's launching Freedom Day Bali. And SpeakuP Monday will be working together as a collaboration, and SpeakuP Monday and Freedom Day Bali. So Freedom Day is all about that. It's all about arming us with the tools that we need to set ourselves free. That's financial, physical, emotional, mental, you name it. And that will be on July the 1st. July the 1st, and you can even come to Tropical Nomad and see that live. But July the 1st, so tomorrow is like a prequel or a preview of that. So just check my social media or SpeakuP Monday. So SpeakuP Monday group on Facebook. So join SpeakuP Monday. That SpeakuP is all one word, SpeakuP. And then Monday separate group. That's on Facebook. And then finally there's a YouTube, which is like my name, Robert Ian Bonnick. So Robert Ian Bonnick. Minus sign or a dash, SpeakuP Monday, and that's the YouTube. So the last 72 episodes of SpeakuP Monday, it's all there like a library, and it's really cool, right? So you get a chance to see all of them, from we had so many different people from all walks of life, but in general it tends to be entrepreneurs, leaders, and coaches. And lastly, so SpeakuP Monday, thanks to the Yak and Savaya, is an award-winning open format, thank you Bhavna, open format deep dive Q&A, right? So those 3 streams all relate to that. It's always a deep dive Q&A, which is usually unlocking wisdom and inspiration, right, in our guests, or if it's the audience version, it's within the audience's collective intelligence that happens on Clubhouse as well. So yeah, feel free to join us, feel free to share, and of course, before we hand over to you, so remember, I'll put the Kickstarter link, I think is on my Instagram, and what we'll do is we'll put it into the SpeakuP Monday group. So if you want to fund that Kickstarter campaign of my brother Kieren-Paul Brown over here, we'll put that. It will be in the IG version, and then what we'll do is it will make sure that's also in the Facebook group, SpeakuP Monday group version as well. All right. So thank you finally to Guzman, who's here by himself, Tropical Nomad.
Thank you.
Keeping it real. Keeping it real.
Holding down the fort.
Holding down the fort by himself. Single-handed. I appreciate that. And look, without further ado, I want to acknowledge you, my brother, for, thank you, my man, for coming in, being honest and letting it be vulnerable when it needed to be, and going with the process. Today we were late due to me, and thanks for being cool, calm, and collected. Didn't even see that temper. Cool, calm, and collected, brother. And I've loved getting to know you a bit, and what you stand for, and the book, and why it's there, and why it's important to follow, and why it's important to fund and to support. So, brother, man, thank you very much indeed. I love the fact that we're so connected, our childhoods. My God, I love it.
It's uncanny.
I know.
It's uncanny. This should not be.
It should not be, but it is. Frequency and resonance. I love it. So, my brother, over to you. However long you want to take, whatever you want to say. Over to you.
Okay, well, I mean, you touched on the Kickstarter campaign. So what I'd just like to say to anyone who's listening, there's a couple of reasons why I'd really hope that you could support it, if you'd like. Well, number one, please do donate. If that's not possible, could you possibly share it on your social medias? Where we're concerned, we're very passionate about helping girls, women, ethnic minorities build real confidence and cultivating self-belief. Tish, who works with me, she's always felt like the world didn't like her because of her skin tone. Not like, oh, you're black, that's wrong. But she's actually Indonesian, she's local, but like her not being pale enough. And then the kind of self-loathing that you have just from seeing yourself in the mirror, or from looking at your hands, or trying to avoid the sun because you don't want to get darker and then become even more ugly. Things like that, or feeling like, again, she needs to be a stick figure. We really want to help, and if you could support us, you'd be doing a great job to help us achieve that goal. Where I'm concerned, I wish to become Stan Lee for an entire generation of human beings, and by helping the campaign, you will also be helping to support and promote my book as well. The book has two objectives, which is to entertain and to inspire. I can't guarantee that you'd like the book if you read it. Like, I really wish I could. The vast majority of people who read my stuff do, but I can't guarantee. But all I can guarantee is this: you will be reading a book from someone who has put 1,000% effort in. I can guarantee that. And this is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do two things. I've always actually wanted to help people, and I've always wanted to create stories. Like, looking back, that's it. Even when I was like 10, I'd be like helping people with their issues and stuff, and someone says, hey, I don't know how to do X. Well, okay, well, let's sit down and let's figure it out. And yeah, for me, this is like the merging of two crucial parts of my personality, or my psyche. So if you could help us to achieve this goal, as well as the people we will be helping around the world, you'll also be helping us and helping me. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you guys for watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one, which will be tomorrow, Wednesday, if you're here in Bali. Thank you so much, guys. Bye for now.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Ta-ta. See ya. Ciao.